Am I the asshole for telling my sister that her husband doesn't love her? I know the title doesn't sound too great, but I really just needed unbiased assurance on this. To start, I, 26 female, have been pregnant with my first child for 8 months now. I have grown to be quite large, and it's extremely hard to now do everyday tasks. This would include tying shoes or running errands without feeling tired. I also have anemia, and because of this I get tired more easily and take prenatal vitamins containing iron to help. My fiancé, 27, has been a huge help during my pregnancy. He is very excited as well as my whole family since I'm the first of my grandma's grandchildren to have kids. The only person who has been less than elated, to say the least, has been my sister, 24. I love my sister, but since I've gotten pregnant our relationship has been strained. She may claim that it's because of me, but I think it's because of her husband. My sister and her husband have been together for 2 years, and I can see that he's a very controlling man. He doesn't allow her to see her family unless he can be present, and her current job is at the company he owns. She says this is because he doesn't want her to say untrue things about him to us and would like to keep an eye on her while she's at work. In my opinion, I think she's a grown woman who can do whatever she wants, and I believe that he's holding something over her that's making her stay with him, as well as act estranged to her family. Whenever I call and ask how she and her husband are doing, she replies with snarky remarks regarding my pregnancy or my fiancé. One day, I was on the phone with her and I asked her if she could make it to my baby shower being held in a week. Her response was, "I would rather watch paint dry than watch you open baby gifts for over an hour." I told her that her husband could come, but she had already made up her mind. My sister actually used to want children before she graduated college, but since marrying her husband she claims that children are a waste of time and money and people who invest in them are idiots. This hurt a little because she also said that she didn't want to see my child either, which sounded nothing like how she was before. When I told her I was pregnant, all she could say was, "Why would you do that to yourself?" Last week was the final straw. My mother invited me to stay in our hometown for the final month of my pregnancy because I wanted to give birth in the hospital I was born in. When I got to my mother's home, I noticed that my sister and her husband were there too. I wasn't happy or angry because my mother invited them to hopefully fix our relationship, which I agreed to. The first night went fine, but the next day was a complete mess. Anytime I felt tired or any other effect from my pregnancy, my sister and her husband would scoff or whisper to each other and laugh. I felt like nothing I did was justifiable in their eyes. One night, I woke up quite late with horrible nausea. I threw up violently for about 3 hours, and my mother and fiancé took me to the clinic to make sure I had enough fluids to get me through the rest of the night. When we got back home, my sister and her husband were in the living room seemingly waiting for us. My mother shut the door, and that's when things hit the fan. My sister blew up on me and told me that I interrupted her sleep for something as minuscule as nausea when I didn't even go into labor. She said that all of my quote problems aren't that bad and that I needed to stop being dramatic over something that I chose to do. This sent me over the edge. I told her, "You need to stop bitching at me when I'm literally just being a pregnant lady. I haven't even been moody with you, but you certainly have. It seems like you're just bitter because your husband, who doesn't even love you, wants no children, and you're taking it out on me." After this, I went to pack my bags, and me and my fiancé left to get a hotel in the city to stay for the rest of my pregnancy. Before I left, I could hear my sister crying, but I was too furious to say anything. I've since gotten calls from my mother and father saying how I was wrong to say those things, but my fiancé thinks I was right. So am I the asshole?
Am I the asshole for saying my wife made us look disgraceful? I have, in the past year, been promoted to a senior position in the engineering company I work for. It has come with many new responsibilities and longer work hours, but my salary has seen a pretty significant increase, which has been greatly appreciated by my wife and our 3 kids, 3 boys and 1 girl. The other day, I was working from home as our firm had an important Zoom meeting about an infrastructure expansion plan. There were maybe 30 people, mainly from our firm, on the call, but also a government representative and the regional head of our firm were present. Being somewhat introverted, I have never liked public displays of affection. They're crude and attention-seeking in my mind. So imagine my shock and embarrassment when my wife, who had recently come home, sits on my lap and started kissing me. It happened just as I was starting to respond to a point that the regional had made, but I ended up completely losing my train of thought. I'm pretty sure everyone on the call saw as well because there was a decently long awkward silence. My wife noticed my discomfort and the call, and she left. Going back to the presentation was just awful for me at that stage. I was talking way too fast and stuttering. One of my co-workers took over from that point, and I didn't say much until the Q&A session. As the call was coming to a close, I mentioned how I planned to refine our plan by the time of the next meeting, but the regional boss told me not to spend too much time on it as your wife seems to need you more than we do, which just further solidified my embarrassment. After the call, I confronted my wife about what happened, and she did not seem too bothered. In fact, she mentioned how it was good that they see that I am a family man and that I was overreacting. She also told me that she thought the webcam was off. I was very frustrated as she knew about this meeting, so I told her that her actions made us look disgraceful and immature and that they caused me great humiliation. My wife was taken aback by this and said that I cared too much about what other people thought and how I'm borderline embarrassed of her. We argued for a bit longer, and it culminated with my wife locking herself in our room. We have not spoken much since then, and I'll probably be sleeping on the couch for the next few days. I am too embarrassed to talk about this with anyone in my personal life. Am I the asshole? Edit. For those wondering, my wife is a high school chemistry and biology teacher, so she has had many work-related Zoom calls herself in the relatively recent past. Update. Thank you so much to everyone who has responded to my post. It means a lot to me. For those of you who expressed second-hand embarrassment, thank you for your empathy. I can assure you, I don't think I have ever felt so embarrassed in my life. I was required to go back to the office today, so I did get a chance to speak with my director. He and most of my coworkers found the situation hilarious, mainly because I'm known as the stoic quiet guy in our workplace. I plan on chatting with my wife about this tonight. My new position has required me to work pretty closely with the aforementioned, and to other women, so perhaps that might be bothering her. Wish me luck. Update 2. I got home and had a long chat with my wife. I started by apologizing for overreacting, and I did say a bunch of other sentimental things that I don't normally say, but I know she loves. My wife accepted my apology and apologized as well. She mentioned that she got defensive earlier because she herself was very embarrassed and she really did assume my webcam was off. She said that she acted spontaneously but ultimately regretted it. However, she reiterated that it was good that my coworkers saw me as a family man. I probed further and asked her if there was anyone in particular she wanted that message aimed at, and she did admit that she felt slightly uncomfortable with me working closely with some of my female colleagues. Lastly, she mentioned how my longer hours have made me less physically affectionate and expressed her desire for that to change. I'm glad things have cooled down, but still feel slight embarrassment about the whole incident.
Am I the asshole for not allowing alcohol in wedding? I am getting married May of next year. I'm currently planning the reception and I have already secured a venue. I was having a discussion with my fiancé about possible food options, catering or cooking, what types of food, buffet style or served, etc. And my mother and one of my aunts were visiting. They threw in some thoughts and advice. As they've had weddings, which I really appreciate, the topic of drinking came up, and my aunt asked what kind of cocktails we'd be serving. I told her we wouldn't be serving alcohol at the wedding. She was shocked and asked what everyone was going to drink. I told her there would be water, sweet tea, lemonade, fruit punch, and soda available. My aunt said that having soda was a bad idea because it's so unhealthy, and so is sweet tea and overly sugary lemonade and fruit punch. I told her if was so concerned about sugar content she could stick with water, and we're planning on having plenty of fresh fruit she could add to it. We'd also have unsweet tea for my diabetic family members, or they're welcome to request or bring a desirable alternative. She asked why alcohol couldn't be a request. I told her I simply didn't want to serve any at my wedding. My fiancé and I would be financially responsible for the purchase, and alcohol would frankly be out of our budget, and we would feel responsible for their actions. She asked if she and the other drinkers of the family could bring their own beer and said it really wouldn't be a party without one. I said no, again, because it's my wedding and fiancé and I would feel responsible for drunk guests. We also want to have a wedding that's fun and happy because everyone there loves each other and is happy to celebrate their family or union. She said it was already a shame I wasn't getting married in a church and the least I could do was make up for it with a good reception. I told her if she can't go one evening without drinking then maybe she's the one with a problem. At this point my mom jumped in and told me I need to apologize. I said no. I don't appreciate how my aunt has spoken to me, and she needs to leave. They ended up going, but then my aunt complained the next day on Facebook about my dry wedding, and said she wasn't going to torture herself driving an hour and a half to my venue just to have a bad time. She also explained how the conversation went the day before and said I called her a drunk for being healthy. I've been getting a lot of messages, some supportive, some on the fence, and some very angry that I want to ruin a good reception by acting like it's the Prohibition era. I'm honestly confused here. Am I the asshole? Edit. My aunt's health comment wasn't about beer, it was about wine. She believes a glass a day is important for maintaining health, and she drinks at least 1 glass every single day. She's also hopped on the intermittent fasting trend, so I take her health advice with a grain of salt, especially since she probably meets the medical threshold for alcoholism. Also, another reason I don't want alcohol is because this is a specifically kid-friendly event. I want my little cousins and nieces, nephews, and my fiancé's younger family members to be able to attend. I don't feel comfortable hosting an all-ages event with lots of alcohol and drunk adults present. A lot of my family members do not behave when they're drunk. Edit 2. For those saying I should make the dry part clear in advance, I planned on having the entire food and drink situation for the wedding figured out and announced 6 months before the date. I wasn't going to spring it on people last minute. Everyone was going to be informed and then further reminded on the save the dates and the invites. I'm also not anti-alcohol or something. I like drinking. There are just too many concerning factors and liabilities with allowing it at my wedding, including the incredibly expensive cost of providing the alcohol. Edit 3. To everyone suggesting a cash bar that would invariably make this situation worse, my relatives expect me to provide alcohol for free. If I tell them they have to pay, they will complain more. One of my uncles was arrested last year because the price of his favorite brand of beer went up and he stole his next 12-pack because he deserved it after how much money he gave to that company. He still thinks the cops and the store were in the wrong. Edit 4. Very tired of people not reading or simply ignoring what I've already made clear and twisting my words. I've explained my case. Most of you agree with me. I am done responding to comments and answering questions.